Right? So this clearly, explicitly states that no one will taste the sweetness of Iman. As for the first hadith, which just merely says there are 3 characteristics which are found in a person, then he will taste the sweetness of Iman. Right? So implied by that wording is that if a person doesn't have those 3 characteristics, then he will not taste the sweetness of Iman, even though he has Iman. Iman. So then, Shaykhul Islam Muhammad bin Wahhab, he went on to mention another narration from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, who said, "Man ahabba lillah wa abghada fillah wa wala fillah wa aada fillah fa innama tunalu walayatullahi bidhalik." That anyone who loves for the sake of Allah, or who hates for the sake of Allah, or who has allegiance for the sake of Allah, and who has enmity for the sake of Allah, then he has acquired by way of that the allegiance of Allah. And on the narration continues, and a servant will never taste Iman, even if his prayer is much and his fasting is much, up until he's like this, meaning he's described by these characteristics. And then he says, and he continues, and he says, and as for the people today, the general people today, they just love only for some worldly reason, and which will not bring them any benefit, meaning on the Day of Judgment, narrated by Ibn Jarir. And also in another narration, Ibn Abbas said concerning the statement of Allah, وَتَقَطَّعَتْ بِهِمُ الْأَسْبَابِ, meaning that the relationships will be cut off from them, meaning al-muwadda, meaning that this will be, that all the relationships will be cut off, and whatever allegiances and love that they had between each other, meaning except for the one that was based upon love of Allah and His Messenger. So concerning these 2 narrations, Shaykh explains, and he says, "Man ahabba fillah," and Ibn Abbas qala man ahabba fillah, from Ibn Abbas that he said that whoever loves for the sake of Allah, meaning who loves for the sake of Allah, he loves the believers because they are friends of Allah. Doesn't love them because he wants something from the world, from them, or he aspires some benefit, but only because they are believers, he loves them on that basis. وَأَبْغَضَ فِي اللَّهِ, meaning he dislikes those who are other than the believers, like the sinful people and the hypocrites and those besides them, from those who don't accept Iman. And he does this for the sake of Allah. Again, so what is his basis for disliking them and hating them? Is for the sake of Allah, not because they've taken something from him, or because they are oppressive in some way, or that because they have struck him or beat him or whatever, or that they've shown enmity towards him, or they've oppressed him. Right? So some people can hate them for that reason. That would be hating for other than the sake of Allah. Right? So you shouldn't hate them for that reason. Rather, it should only be because these are natural forms of hating. You should only hate them for affairs that are connected to the affairs of ibadah. وَوَالَى فِي اللَّهِ, he has meaning allegiance for the sake of Allah, meaning that he loves and he supports and aids, because muwalat, al-muwalat is loving and aiding and supporting. Right? It goes beyond loving, it falls into supporting and aiding. وَعَادَى فِي اللَّهِ, and he shows enmity to Allah, meaning that he shows enmity to those who are sinful and who are hypocrites and those who don't accept Iman for the sake of Allah, because Allah loves those, Allah hates those people, and so therefore He hates those people as well. And then Ibn Abbas continues, "For verily it is by way of this that the allegiance, or that the love of Allah and His aid is obtained." Right? That's walaya. As for al-wilaya, there's a difference here. Walaya with a fatha, walaya, that is Allah's mahabba and His nusra, meaning Allah's love and His aid. And as for wilaya is a different meaning. Wilaya just merely means leadership and position, right? Or like having a position to act in the capacity of a judge, or as a king or whatever. Then all of this is wilaya. But walaya with a fatha, then this refers to the love of Allah. So anyone who is described with these characteristics, these 4 characteristics, as Ibn Abbas has explained, then Allah loves him, just as Allah says in another in an ayah, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَنْ يَرْتَدَّ مِنْكُمْ عَنْ دِينِهِ فَسَوْفَ يَأْتِي اللَّهُ بِقَوْمِهِ يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ أَذِلَّةٍ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَعِزَّةٍ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ يُجَاهِدُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا يَخَافُونَ لَوْمَةَ لَائِمٍ. The rough meaning which is, O you who believe, whoever turns away amongst you from his religion, and soon will Allah bring a people whom he will love, and they will love him, gentle upon the believers and severe upon the disbelievers, and they strive in the path of Allah, and they don't fear the blame of the blamer. So the love of Allah is obtained by obedience to his messenger, just as occurs in another statement of Allah, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. Say, if you truly love Allah, then follow me and Allah will love you. So whoever made ittiba of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah will love him, and whoever disobeyed the Messenger, then Allah will dislike him and hate him. And then he says that when Ibn Abbas said, فَإِنَّمَا تُنَالُ وَلَايَةَ اللَّهِ بِذَلِكَ, that verily the love of Allah is obtained by way of this, meaning that a person will not acquire the love of Allah and his aid except by these affairs: loving for the sake of Allah, hating for the sake of Allah, showing allegiance for the sake of Allah, and an enmity for the sake of Allah. Then by way of these characteristics will he acquire the sweetness of Iman, the love of Allah. As for the one who makes the world as the scales of balance and as the point of analogy, then he hates for its sake and loves for its sake and gives allegiance for its sake and so on and so forth. Whoever is benevolent towards him, he loves him, even if that person is an enemy of Allah. And whoever does evil towards him, then he hates him, even he might be a wali to Allah, a friend of Allah. Then this person will not acquire the walaya of Allah, the friendship of Allah. And this is why Ibn Abbas said at the end of this, that the general people, when you look at them today, you find that the relationships are based upon the affairs of the world. So Ibn Abbas showed rejection in his time against the people who began to make these allegiances and enmities for the sake of the world. So how will it be for our time, in our time? No doubt the affair is even more severe, because many people, they've lost these characteristics of showing enmity for the sake of Allah, and love for the sake of Allah, and allegiance for the sake of Allah, and hating for the sake of Allah, except those few whom Allah has willed. And you find all of this has decreased in today. And we don't say it's totally absent, but we say it is absent. These characteristics, they are absent. They are present, but they are totally absent. And all praise is due to Allah. But we say that it's diminished and it's very small in number. However, inshallah, the Shaykh says, so long as there is found to be even a small amount, then everyone should look into his soul and investigate and make sure that he's not with the majority of the people, but he's with those few people who are upon these characteristics. So he says, like for example, he says he shouldn't be like those majority of the people who have wasted this great foundation, like those, for example, who don't show allegiance except for their hizbiyah and for their methodology. So whoever agrees with them upon their hizbiyah and their methodology, then they love him, even if he's an enemy to Allah and his messenger. And whoever opposes their methodology and their hizbiyah, then they hate him, even if he is a wali of Allah. And then Ibn Abbas said concerning the speech of Allah, وَتَقَطَّعَتْ بِهِمُ الْأَسْبَابِ, that the relationships between them will be cut off, meaning love. And the Shaykh explains, he says that this is the end result of the one who worships other than Allah on the Day of Judgment. Those who worship other than Allah in the dunya, they love whatever they worship. Just as Allah says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ, which is the verse at the beginning of this chapter, that those who amongst mankind are those who take as other things besides Allah as rivals, and they love them as they should truly love Allah. And this is because, and he says likewise, those who follow in this world, those who are the followers in this world, they love those whom they follow in misguidance. So they find that the kuffar, they have love amongst themselves, and likewise the mushrikeen and those things that they worship, that you find that they have this mutual love between themselves. However, on the Day of Judgment, the affair will become the other way around. This love will become enmity. Just as Allah says, al-akhillau yawma'idhin ba'duhum li ba'din adu, that close intimate friends on that day will become enemies on the Day of Judgment. Illa al-muttaqeen, except those who are those who are upon taqwa, those who fear Allah. So therefore there will not remain any form of love except that which used to be for the sake of Allah and for Allah. This is that which will remain on the Day of Judgment. As Allah says, describing the believers, إِخْوَانًا عَلَى سُرُرٍ مُتَقَابِلِينَ, like brothers to one another, mutually facing each other upon reclining like seats. And Ibrahim ﷺ said to the mushrikeen, and he would caution them, as occurs in the Quran, as Allah says, إِنَّمَا اتَّخَذْتُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْثَانًا مَوَدَّةَ بَيْنِكُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Indeed, you have taken between yourselves as idols besides Allah. You've taken them as a form of love, mutual love between yourselves in the life of this world. ثُمَّ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ يَكْفُرُ بَعْضُكُمْ بِبَعْضٍ وَيَلْعَنُ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا وَمَأْوَاكُمُ النَّارِ. And then on the Day of Judgment, you will disbelieve, you will show rejection against each other, and you will curse each other, and your abode is the fire. So therefore on the Day of Judgment, they will curse each other and they will hate each other, because they will say to the ones who misguided them that you are the reason for our misguidance. You misguided us and you made us deviate and you took us away from the deen of Allah. And so therefore it will all turn into enmity and hatred. As for the love of the believers, who loved each other for the sake of Iman, and allegiance for the sake of Allah, and enmity for the sake of Allah, then that love and allegiance will remain. Rather, it will increase on the Day of Judgment, and it will increase forever, for eternity, as Allah says, وَنَزَعْنَا مَا فِي صُدُورِهِم مِّن غِلٍّ إِخْوَانًا عَلَى سُرُرٍ مُتَقَابِلٍ. That we will remove from whatever is in the hearts of any kind of dislike, and and there will be brothers upon reclining beds or seats facing each other, meaning in paradise. So this verse shows that muhabba, which is for other than Allah, it will cease on the Day of Judgment, and it will turn into enmity, and that those who used to follow in misguidance, that their muhabba again will turn, that their muhabba for their leaders, it will turn into enmity on the Day of Judgment, and they will curse each other and they will blame each other from the angle of wailing over their loss, and refuges with Allah from that, and from their harm that they've fallen into. So the Shaykh says this is a great and mighty affair. It's obligatory upon a Muslim that he weigh himself with respect to it, and it's for this reason it has been called the chapter of a trial or tribulation. Like this chapter and what it contains, the Shaykh says, وَلِهَذَا يُسَمَّى بِبَابِ الْإِمْتِحَانِ. It's been labelled the Bab of al-Imtihan, the test or the trial. And so anyone who claims Iman, and everyone who claims Islam, and everyone claims Zuhud and Wara', but in reality the balance and the scale of testing is what is contained in this chapter. And that's the end of this chapter, and the end of this explanation of the Shaykh, and that's the end of the chapter.